For a long time, the narrative of music and music writing has been written by men. This woman's work confronts the male dominance and sexism in the music business. And I spoke to one of the editors of this collection of essays, Sinead Gleeson. Very welcome, Sinead Gleeson, author of This Woman's Work. How are you keeping?
I'm great, Megan. I'm delighted to talk to you. How are you doing?
So good. I'm so excited to talk about your latest book, This Woman's Work, about some amazing women who I guess were trailblazers in the music industry. Talk to us about that project. And I know there's 16 of you in this and 16 essays.
Yeah, I mean, I have written in my previous book, Constellations. I spent a lot of time in hospital when I was in my teens, and they're very kind of formative years when you're figuring out, your tastes and what you're interested in. And the thing that got me through those years were two things, which was books and music. Twice in the same year, I got to see a band in Dublin called Sonic Youth. And the bass player in Sonic Youth is a woman called Kim Gordon, who was one of my kind of icons. And there weren't, a huge amount of women who were out front. She was like playing, she was singing, she was writing the songs. She was quite an icon for me. And fast forward a couple of years ago, I got to do a public interview with her. And we got on really well. And she had been asked about doing a collection of music. And she said, I don't know if I could. I'm not really much of an editor, but I just did this thing in Dublin with this woman and she edits anthologies and maybe the two of us could do it together. So it's kind of like, I have to pinch myself a little bit sometimes when I'm emailing Kim and we're doing Zooms and having chats. So we just decided that we would start this book about, the music industry, as you know, for a long time. It can be very blokey. It can be, there's a whole attitude around what women can be, they're at the front, they're glamorous, or they're, girl groups. We wanted to kind of tell a different story about what music meant to people who were involved in music, people in music that had a huge impact on them. So that's the exciting bit, is pulling together the big list and then seeing when people come back to you and they say yes. I couldn't believe the work as it was coming in. So diverse and so fascinating. And I learned a lot about people I didn't necessarily know about, or styles of music I didn't know as much as others do. So it's been wonderful.
Who do you think this book is for? Like, who are the kind of target audience? Who are the people that are going to pick this up?
I hope anybody who likes music, but then at the same time, not all the pieces are categorically about music. So I think anybody who loves a great story. One of the contributors is Fatima Bhutto, whose aunt was Benazir Bhutto, the famous politician who was assassinated. And her piece ends up talking about, growing up, when you don't grow up in a democracy, how difficult it is to get music, literally buying, counterfeit tapes and trying to get access to music that we in the Western world take for granted.
When it came to writing in your own chapter and then putting it together, did you enjoy the process? How was it for you?
I did. I think writing in lockdown was I think very tricky for everybody. My children were home. I bought a little tiny desk to put up in the bedroom so I would have like some space and some quiet. So I chose somebody who is quite obscure and is still alive, but is sort of fading from memory. She's an American composer who's in her 80s now, Wendy Carlos. She's a kind of pioneer of the synthesizer. She did the soundtrack for The Shining and for Tron and Clockwork Orange. She worked with Stanley Kubrick. Very kind of groundbreaking in terms of not many women were working in soundtracks in the 70s. She also, in the early 70s, transitioned, which is something I think that has a lot to do with her pulling back from the world, because lots of the interviews tended to focus on that and not her incredible genius at music. And I know about Wendy Carlos because my husband is a composer and a producer, and he introduced me to her. And I think over lockdown, I don't know if this is a good or bad thing, but the opening scene of The Shining, which is a brilliant film about a family stuck and not able to go anywhere, we watched that over and over again and talked about Carlos. It's a kind of an act of legacy writing this essay in a piece that I hope people she won't be forgotten, because she is kind of receding into the rear view mirror and she's still alive. So that's another reason that you can commemorate somebody in a piece of writing, and some of the pieces in the book do that.